So welcome back. This time I'm going to show you a little bit about some multiple exposures I'm going to create from the images you saw in the last video. Hopefully if you watched it you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, maybe duck out now, find the last video from that introduces you to all the images and why I chose them, and then come back and have a watch of this afterwards. Anyway, I was just going to talk you through a couple of images, multiple exposure. Now I've chosen two here, and these two images here are quite different. As I mentioned in the other video, most of these images I never made for them to be standalone images. I took them all with a mind, with a thought they were going to be combined eventually. So the one on the left here I loved for the sort of sparkling, the golds, the silvers, the real sort of Christmassy feel. The one on the right I loved because it had such really strong lines and colours. It's just a bulk standard snap. It's nothing special, but I do love it, and I thought these two might combine really well in Photoshop. So I've highlighted them both. Right click, I'm going to go to Edit In and Open as Layers in Photoshop. And so what it's going to do is take these two through from Lightroom. I generally work in Lightroom and move into Photoshop. So those of you that don't have Lightroom, I apologise, but this is my workflow and the way I do it. So I think it's useful if you have got Lightroom that you can see how I do it. And I'm just going to talk you through the process here. So I'm going to choose to have this image on the bottom. Okay, I always choose the image that I love the most and put it on the bottom, and then think about adding something to it. I love the two of these images together because they are so contrasty. One is all about colour and movement and light and sort of sparkles, and the other one is all about lines and sharpness. And I do quite a lot of combining multiple exposures with an ICM and a non-ICM. So this is not something new for me. So I like to zoom out on here so I can grab the corners and see what's going on. I can always zoom in again when I want to look at details, but I like being able to grab the corners if I'm having to move things around. Now, it really doesn't matter if you come in with a square image, if you come in with a phone image and a camera image, you will find quite often they are completely different sizes. So if you take a camera image and you take a phone image, you will find that whichever one is smaller, when you overlay it on top, it won't be big enough. So you can move it around in here. So what you need to do is highlight the one that you want to move. So in this case, I want to be playing with this one because it's not filling it up. I've already decided that I'm going to see anyway, I'm going to twist this, okay? Just by grabbing the corner, you can see twisting it and then getting it nice and straight. And then I'm going to line it back up and I'm going to pull it out. Now, the top one was a phone image. The bottom one was a camera image, which is why they've come out with different sizes. I'm not too fussed about, it doesn't worry me if I'm going to go over the edges. It's more the shapes that I'm enjoying here, but I do want to capture the edges on the end image here. I don't want to lose these bits out of the image. So we've got that sat on the top. At the moment, it's completely obliterating the image underneath. So what we need to do is have a play. And so I'm just going to see what we've got. I'm going to take it right back to the beginning, and I'm just going to bring some in and see what we've got. Now, I actually quite like that. That's like 20% normal blending mode. So there's not really any blending mode chosen. It's just literally an overlay that you can do. And I quite like that. But I'm just going to move this up to quite high, and I'm just going to go through and see if there's any other blending modes that look quite nice. Now, for a Christmas card, that is actually quite dramatic. I'm not quite sure 97% is how far I'd need to go, but I think that's quite a dramatic, interesting Christmas card if you were looking for something quite unique to share. But we'll go down a little bit further. That's quite nice. It's very bright. I quite like that. It's a lighter colour. Overlay, again, it's a bit stronger. So whilst I thought normal was quite nice at the start, I'm finding a lot of other blending modes that I really like here. Again, that it's got so much more depth, so much more richness of colour than soft light, which is a bit like what it was at normal. I'm just going to carry on through just to see if there was anything else. Some of them give you kind of a little bit more abstracty results. Something like difference, but maybe tail it right back. Again, I'm not sure. That's not for me. So I think I'm going to go back. I quite liked overlay, but just slightly there. Okay, I'm going to go with that as my, let me just check. Actually, for something a bit different, I'm actually going to go with this. I don't use these very often, but I really like the dramatic effect I'm getting on here. Yeah, maybe it's just too much. I don't know. It's you know, at the time it's we'll go with colour burn just for this. So that is my finished multiple exposure. So I'm just going to layer these two images. I'm just going to flatten the image so that I can take it back. If I want to play with it, I'll play with it again in another way. File, save. And if you're working out of Lightroom into Photoshop, what you'll see is it will come back in next to one of your original images when it comes back through. So here it's popped in up here. And then if you want, you can then obviously play with your images if you feel the highlights are too much, or if you want to give a little bit more contrast or not so much contrast. If you want to play with the vibrance, you can do all these kind of things. I do all these kind of things in Lightroom when I get back into it. You could say, actually, I want square Christmas cards, so let's have us play with the square. If you double L click, it kind of loses everything else around it, and I quite like. Yeah, I mean, you could even have a number of different Christmas cards out of the same image by just selecting different areas of the image that you want to play with. I'm a big believer in sort of playing with this kind of thing. So, and you just clicked the L key once again. And if I just go back to reset, you can see where we came from. So that was, just see here. So that was just those two images brought in together, this sort of star, this background, and then we created this lovely image here. So I'm going to go on and do a couple more for you and bring them all together in a video so you can see them in a minute. The next one we're going to have a look at is an image we saw in the first video here, and it was a set of I don't know, canisters for candles, I think they were. And I'd created this nice square and I really liked it, but I had a very quick play before running this through with you guys. And I found that the area dark in the middle was really kind of disrupting the image. So what I've done is I've broken it up into two, and I've got a lovely gold image and a lovely blue silvery image. So the first one I'm going to work with here is I'm going to choose this gold image here. And then I really like these ginkgo leaves. Now I've had a play again. I've had a play with the with the ICM, and it was just too soft. It got lost. The whole thing became a bit of a mush. So I'm just going to show you instead taking through a non-ICM. So we're going to run again with an ICM and a non-ICM here. So we're going to go edit in, drop down, open as layers in Photoshop, and hopefully this will come through. Yep. That's great. Now, what I want to do this time is I want to have this gold one as the bottom image because it's kind of like my base, and I just want to add these silver elements on top. Now, the first issue we've got is that the gold doesn't cover the area that I want it to. So we're just going to go view and zoom out so that I can see the edges again to pull them around. And I am just going to see about making this a little bit bigger here. Okay, I'm quite happy that it doesn't match the whole thing up because we can move it around. Going to highlight this top image here. Let's just have a quick look on normal just to see what happens. You end up with sort of lines on the top and lines on the bottom. Okay, it's quite nice. I think just looking at it, it's a little bit disrupting for me, so I am just going to, let's have a look. I'm just going to see what happens if I elongate. Yeah, I'm just going to make that bigger so it does actually fill up the whole picture, because then I think it'll end up with a, there we go, it's a slightly better result. Right, so this is just normal, and I'm playing at 100%. I'm just playing with this. Well, normal 40% opacity. If you go up, you lose the whole thing. If you come back, you don't get much. Okay, so let's just highlight this top one and have a see what we get. Okay, and I'm just running through some of the blend modes so you can see what happens. Now I really like this. It's really rich, really sort of yeah, Christmassy almost. Remember, this is on 100%. The lighten, I really like this because I think it's a complete contrast, and I think these delicate little lines radiating out like veins are really lovely contrast to the gold lines behind. Overlay, which is one I quite use a lot. I don't find this works because I find they're both, the top image is completely overtaking the bottom image. And some fun ones here. Difference. I actually quite like that because I love blue and gold, and you get this kind of blue and gold effect. And exclusion works really well as well. So I've actually got 4 possible images in here to choose which one to play with. So I'm just going to go up to the first one, which I quite liked, which was the colour burn. I'm around 72% at the moment. I'm just going to take it back and just see. At the moment, I'm finding these lines, the vertical lines, too strong. Okay, so I need to override those vertical lines a bit. And actually looking at it now, I think you have to go too far. So I think I'm going to discount the colour burn now. I'm going to have a play with the lighten. Just take it back. I'm just going to bring it in a little bit. And I think this one works slightly better because the lines are, yeah, the lines are not quite so obvious. That becomes too much. I think that's quite nice. I'm actually thinking possibly of a square crop on this now. So I'm going to take that as it is. I'm going to go layer, flatten image. Okay, I'm going to go file and save and take it into Lightroom. And then we're just going to have a play with the square crop and see whether we can balance it a little bit better so that the vertical lines aren't quite so obvious. So I'm just going to work on a 1 by 1. As you've seen before, double L click gives you a concentrated look at what you're looking at without all the distractions around the outside. Quite like that, but I do feel the top is dominating, so I'm just going to move down to this area, and it now becomes more of an abstract image, and I really quite like that. I think that's really quite nice to go forward with. So that would be my finished image for those 2 that we were looking at there. So if we go back, we can just see that was that one, and this one here. Okay, so these 2 images created this one here. The next one we're going to look at is we're going to use a number of ICMs and non-ICMs in the same image. So we're going to go with more than just 2 images this time for multiple. So the first image I'm going to use is this ICM of the ginkgo leaves. Okay, so before we use the non-ICM, and then I am going to also pick up, and that's going to be my background image, okay, and then I'm going to pick up these 3 images here, which are this one's an ICM of some lights that were kind of on almost like a dandelion light setup, and then these were tree lights, sparkly tree lights. So I've selected 4 images there, right click, same as you do when you've got 2 images, edit in and open as layers in Photoshop. And what that's going to do is that's going to bring all 4 layers this time across into Photoshop for us. So here we go. And some of these are phone photos and some of these are normal camera photos. So I'm going to start with this one, and this one's going to go to the bottom straight away, and you can see these ones were phone photos, so they're different sort of result. This one was actually a non-phone photo, but it's no, it wasn't, it was a phone photo. So the bottom one that I'm using is going to give a really good base image because it's a nice solid raw file, and then I'm going to add to it. So first of all, I'm just going to get rid of those 3 so you can see the base image that I'm working with. The other images I have on offer are this one, which is quite nice with quite soft orange lights. This one, which has got more lights in places, but kind of a whiter light. And then this one, which is an ICM. Now I'm definitely going to use this one. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this so it's the right size. Okay, so we're going to go back to view, and we're going to just zoom out a little bit. So again, so I can see the edges. Now I quite like the one underneath is non-discernible, as in I can pull it around and it doesn't really matter if I lose the edges too much. This one I do actually want to keep everything in the picture, so I'm actually going to make this one very slightly smaller. Okay, and I don't want to lose the bottoms of it, so I'm just going to, yeah, we're going to go with that. So if we now look at the top, they will be sitting on top of each other almost. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just have a look at normal opacity and just play with this. Now I already quite like this because it's very soft, very, very soft indeed, but I quite like that already. Okay, so let's just leave that at around 52%, but then we're just going to have a quick look. I really like that. That's color burn. Lighten, again, it's beautifully soft. If you just push up the strength a little bit more, I think it adds almost like a fairy dust or a sprinkling of snow drops almost on it. So I'm just going to bring that one so it's sitting above. So I've now had a play with this one. Let's just go and see if there's any more. Overlay is quite nice because you get quite a nice contrast here on this one. Yeah, really nice. I'm just looking at the crop here and thinking I probably need to just have a little bit of a play with. There we go. We don't want to lose any of that bottom image there at all. Okay, and then we're just gonna, yeah, that's pretty good. Right, now I'm just going to have a play and see whether if I add either of these two on top, it will help at all. Now, I don't think it matters too much about the angle because essentially it's just the little lights that we're adding in here. So I'm actually going to zoom out and lose the tree trunk effect. We're just going to see what happens when we add this. It may overtake the image, so we just need to be very careful that it doesn't overtake everything underneath. So at the moment, all of those, we're kind of losing everything. However, these ones start to become quite nice. Now, I'm not liking this bit that's coming through at all. So I quite like that. So what the problem is here is this line down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back into, it's because I've got two here. Let's see whether this one's any better. If we just see if we move this one out, whether this one's a better one to use. There we go. So we've got like a tree effect here. So let's just see on this one, if we go through the same overlay patterns here on this one, let's see what happens here. I quite like that. And what we were on overlay a minute ago, I really quite like that. It's a bit strong, it's a bit dominating, but I really like the sort of branches that are coming through with the little lights. So I'm just going to pull it back a little bit, just so you just get a hint of these lights coming through here. So you just can see the branches and you can just see the lights. And if we add that one in, we can choose whether we want to add that in. I think it adds something, but I think, again, we need to just be a little bit careful how strong that one is now. So I'm just going to pull that one back a little bit. There we go. Again, I might just think about making it fit the frame so that we've got a nice frame. And I rather like that. So we've gone from a base image, okay, which is just this ginkgo on 100% down the bottom here. I've then added in this the lights on top here, the multiple exposure, the ICM lights that we had, and that's just at 46% on overlay mode. And then what do we choose? We chose this one, I think, in the end, didn't we? And then this one is on overlay mode. This one is also on overlay mode here at 50%. And I think that gives a really lovely feeling compared to what I started with. I think it's a really lovely feeling. And I think you can go richer even further when we take it back into Lightroom. So let's go File, Layer, Flatten Image. Yes. So File, save that now. And that's going to pop into our Lightroom. Down here. And with this one, I would actually go and have a play now in Lightroom and just sort of check that everything is as good as it could be. So the first thing, I'm just going to have a little play with the blacks and just pull them back a bit and just see if it gives an even stronger image. I quite like the blacks a little bit back. Vibrance, just to push the colours a little bit. Now I'm just going to have a play and see whether I can warm it up a little bit, whether it works or not. To me, that doesn't work. That actually cooling it down very slightly works more. And then what I'm going to do is just go to specific colours. So I'm just going to play with the saturation of the yellow and the orange and just push those very slightly here. Not too much, just enough to create a little bit more punch. If you want to go further, you could have a look at the contrast. If you don't think it's contrasty enough, I think that's too much personally. I quite like the soft gentleness of it. So that's my end image, those three brought together. I hope you enjoyed seeing that come together and saw my sort of thought process on how I worked through that one. So this is the last in my set of multiple exposures from my trip to the garden centre that I wanted to share with you. And this one I'm just going to show you is, there was some feathers here, some cream feathers, and this beautiful sort of burgundy maroon feather, just one in the middle of them all. And it really caught my eye because it was such a colour contrast in amongst the white ones. And so what I did was I was twisting the camera around to the left. Now you can see it was on quite a long shutter speed for me, which is 1.3 seconds. Normally I'm working at about 1/4 of a second. But I was experimenting with my new camera, so I was just having a bit of a play, and I really loved the effect that it got. It kind of wrapped up this this maroon feather in amongst all the others. It kind of looked as though it was being given a cuddle by the rest of it. I really loved the textures and the structures that came through. A couple of the other ones I took that I quite like as well. I really like sort of the gold coming through here. I quite like that, and the blues and the maroons here, and that one. Quite like this one. I love how these the gold lights shimmering on here. But I decided that I was going to work with this one here. I also took a couple of images here. I love the fact with my new mirrorless camera that I can throw the aperture completely wide open, or I can completely defocus the camera, which is what I did to create these beautiful sort of buku effect here. So I'm just going to use one of these, and I'm going to use this one here because it's just got slightly more detail in the circles, and I'm going to use this one here that I mentioned. So we're going to go right click, edit in, drop down, open as layers in Photoshop. Okay, so this should appear in Photoshop and we can have a play. The nice thing about this is that both images were taken with my phone. Both images were taken in the same orientation. So they should just come in principle and sit right on top of each other with no problem at all. Now, this was the image that I wanted to add to because I love this and it was just adding something to it. So I'm going to bring that one down underneath. Okay. Now I want to select the top image here. And first thing I'm going to do is just literally pull it back to nothing and just see what happens when I add it. Now, I initially did this and I thought, absolutely love it. I know it's not a question at all about, you know, how is it going to work or is it going to work? It is going to work brilliantly. What I did decide to do, however, was just to spread the buku out, the little lights out a little bit more, so they weren't absolutely slap bang on top of the feather. They sort of surrounded the feather a little bit more. I'm just going to zoom out so I can see the edges and see where my thing are and just have a little play a little bit more with this. I quite liked how the line of, I quite like having a little bit detail in the top there, and I quite liked how this line came in through the bottom here. Let's go with that for the time being and just sit it on top of it. My end result was actually a square crop, so I'm just thinking momentarily of making sure that it's going to look okay when I go with a square crop as well. So as I said, I quite like it in normal mode, but I am just going to push it up and just see what happens if I go over some of these other modes. And at the moment, none of these are doing. They're all obliterating it completely. This one, yeah, some of these are just too much. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting. I quite like this one because you've got so much texture coming through on the back. I do feel the lights are a little bit clumpy, a little bit overpowering. So I'm just going to bring them back here. Okay. And I am thinking about later, I am just going to move that because I am going to go, let's have a go, something like that. I am just going to show you, okay, what you can also twist your image round, okay, your images on top of each other by grabbing the one that you want. So I could bring this through. I did try this, but now I think it looks quite messy because the circles are going in completely the opposite direction. They feel as though they're sort of less neat and tidy. So I'm going to put it back to where it originally started. and then I'm going to bring it back across. Okay, so I think we're going to go with that for the time being. Okay, just check that there aren't any other lights that we like. Hard light was too much. Some of these are just, yeah, just not good at all. I really loved, that's interesting because it's kind of very soft and gentle, but I think we're going to go with the soft light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer, it's very simple. I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to flatten the image there now. I'm going to go File, Save, and it's going to pop up in Lightroom here. And then we'll just do the finishing touches to the image. So as I mentioned, I was thinking of a square crop. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is square crop it, because it makes me be able to see the image much better. So double L click, get rid of everything around it. You can move the image. So that's a bit too much at the top. It's a bit too much at the bottom. Something like that. I think it fills the frame beautifully. So that's my chosen image. L to get out of that. Now I'm just going to have a play and see what happens if I warm some of these up. Okay, so you can end up with a very sort of yellow image, or quite a cool, I quite like that because it's kind of blue with the gold. It's quite nice. But I'm going to come back to sort of about here. I'm just going to have a play with the blacks, just see if pushing the blacks helps a little bit. I'm not sure it does. Just play with the contrast. Again, I'm kind of doing this on the hoof for you. Quite like a little bit there. The other thing you can do is have a play with the midtones, the shadows, and the highlights. And the lovely thing with the new setup is that you can pick a color, and then you can sort of play with how strong it is down the bottom, or you can play with how powerful you want it to be coming through here. So let's just have a look. If there's, you can really see the effects that putting different colors in does straight away. So I'm not quite sure any of these are doing it for me yet. Let's just have a play with the blue. I'm going to leave it at that. It's just to show you that I think, you know, let's just tint it very slightly. Pink tint, warm it up very slightly. There we go. That's my end image. So just to show you again, that was a flower, multiple feather ICM, and then some lights on top of it. And that was the end result. Now I've just gone through and done that for you, but in a previous attempt, I did actually have a completely different result to that one, which I really rather liked. And I ended up creating this, which I rather like. It's sort of pinky and goldy. The colours are just slightly different. So you can see that by doing it any number of times, if you don't keep the recipe and remember how you did it, it's very hard to redo exactly the same. Anyway, I hope you really enjoyed the walkthrough of me bringing a few of these multiple exposure images together, and how I went through bringing them together, choosing the images that I wanted to use, and then the blending modes and the overlaying process. Again, if you enjoyed the video, please do give me a like. If you fancy leaving me a comment, that's always lovely. And I look forward to seeing you next time.